Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Soul Rising podcast. My name is Amanda McCoy Flanagan. I am your host. I am so glad that you've come back to join me again. Thank you so much. I know some of you have been tuning in more often, and I'm getting amazing guests on my show lately. And I am so proud to bring you Lauren Sisler. We met through what's called the Get Griefy Collective. Well, actually, the magazine itself. Lauren was the cover girl for the last issue. Yay!
There it is.
Love that. That is so cool. You look so cool there. Kara Sanchez started this Get Griefy magazine like a year ago. I think I became a member of their small business collective, and I've contributed some pieces, some writing, and done some advertising in there and stuff. And it's just growing. And it's evidenced by the fact that we have a wonderful Lauren on the cover this time, who is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. And I just want to start by thanking you, first of all, for being here and for being you and for showing the world like more than just like a ESPN broadcaster, happy, everybody's happy, everything's great, rah, rah. Like Lauren has written a book, which we're going to talk about in a minute, because she's been through some hard stuff. And showing the world that vulnerable side, that emotional side, that reality that we all live with, but we don't always like to show, especially on TV. It's huge. It's huge. I really, really respect you and admire you for being real. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate the introduction. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Got to be real, man. This is what the world needs. Authentic, because look, life is hard and life is crazy, and we love to paint those pretty pictures, but this is real. So we got to lean into it.
Yeah. And when you show it, when I show it, when anybody shows it, right, that whole we give other people permission to then show their pain, and that's where the healing comes in. And that's where the connection comes in, which is what this whole podcast is about, is how we connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something greater. So when we're showing the pain and we're showing people the real life stuff that we go through, in with the happiness and the joy and all the good stuff too, right? Like just all of it, right? I always say we're on a spectrum of emotion, like we're just all of it. So when you do it, you allow other people, give them the courage to do it too. So it's awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about Lauren before we get going here, because Lauren and I could probably talk for days, and we're chomping at the bit here to get to it. So Lauren Sisler is a national award-winning sports broadcaster who has been captivating audiences with her insightful coverage on ESPN since 2016. Not only is she a powerhouse in the broadcasting world, but she's also the author of a compelling new book, Shatterproof. Lauren is passionate about sports, but even more passionate about telling the stories of the coaches, athletes, and fans who make it more than a game. Lauren's path to success hasn't been a simple march to victory. In 2003, during her freshman year at Rutgers University, Lauren faced a profound tragedy that could have halted her dreams. Amidst her grief and despair, Lauren discovered an incredible courage that propelled her forward, turning pain and shame into a pathway for success. Now she shares her journey with audiences nationwide, aiming to shed light on crucial issues and dismantle the obstacles that prevent us from embracing our fullest potential. There is so much in there. I mean, there's so much that we could just unpack. And Lauren, welcome to the show. Hello.
Yes, it's good to see you. I know we spent a little time talking on the phone. I think I was traveling when we first connected, and I feel like we just couldn't stop talking. We had all these things and life experiences, and you shared a lot of your heart and what you've walked through. And and then we're like, we got to save some of it for the podcast. So here we are. Great conversation, and just appreciative of this opportunity.
What jumps out in your bio immediately is this profound tragedy that could have halted your dreams, and that you found this courage amidst the shame. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and your book, because your book is just a demonstration of that, of that courage, and your success in and of itself is a profound demonstration.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I, have walked a tough road. The word shame that you use percolates a lot. That really kind of became the foundation for my memoir, my book, Shatterproof. Here, that is subtitled How I Overcame the Shame of Losing My Parents to Opioid Addiction and Found My Sideline Shimmy. And so that really has just been, it's been a journey, because shame has been at the center and you highlight the word opioid addiction, addiction. And I think that's where the shame has had its grip on me for so many years, and really was the reason that I went into hiding. And then when I finally, which we'll unpack some of that, finally, and I don't want to say came to terms, because I don't want anybody to ever feel like they have to come to terms with tragedy or come to terms with grief, because that's something that you'll feel for the rest of your life, and that's okay. But for me, it was more of an understanding and a willingness to go there, a willingness to walk into the shame and say, this is it. Like, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this? Let's go there. And that has been a long journey of years and years of healing through this grief process. So for me, it really just became unpacking my parents' death, unpacking what happened to them, and better understanding the why, and moving through that in a way that has given me more clarity, more perspective, and then really finding my own purpose in all of it. And I think that's been the coolest part of this whole journey. And so, I guess we'll unpack the story and talk a little bit about all the things.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because that addiction piece carries its own shame. Like, I host virtual substance loss groups, and it has its own layer of shame attached, or why would they choose that over me, and all that kind of stuff. But your story is a little bit different, because you didn't live with addict parents. You didn't grow up like that, right? You've told me that it was like sudden and unexpected and a complete shock. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, growing up, I in my little mind looked at our family as that picture perfect. My parents were supportive, unconditional love. I was a gymnast growing up my entire life in the gym, in and out of the gym, day in, day out. My brother was an athlete. My parents always made sure he was where he needed to be. And they were always just very supportive. We had what we needed. I wouldn't say that we were given things on a silver spoon. Certainly we were not, we could not afford to do that. But also my parents made sure we had everything we needed to succeed. And so I'm going about life, living my dreams, doing gymnastics, chasing the college scholarship, ended up signing with Rutgers University. Not only was it my dream, but also my parents' dream. And so I'm living out our dreams. And it was just a really awesome experience. I'm doing life, doing college, going to football games, experiencing the world. Fast forward to my second semester of my freshman year, I'm talking to my parents on the phone, because our relationship, we were super tight. Distance never pulled us apart. And so we were always in touch, always in communication. And I had called my parents this particular evening. We had talked a little bit about gymnastics and school and life, and then hung up the phone, said our goodbyes, and I love yous, and everything seemed normal. And then I get a call that very night. In the middle of the night, I'm woken up by my dad calling me to tell me my mom died. And it obviously came as a complete shock. I just talked to mom on the phone. She's 45 years old. It's the middle of the night. Like, what happened? Like, Dad, tell me, explain this to me. And he said, Lauren, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And unfortunately, he never showed up that day. And instead, it was my cousin and my uncle to let me know that my dad had died. And this all happened within 5 hours of each other.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. So how did you handle that? Let's look at like the first year out, because that is wildly shocking to the nervous system, the trauma, right? How did you deal with that?
Well, I don't know if I dealt with it. I don't know if I
You used the word hiding before.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I was gonna say, I don't know if I dealt with it well. I think that, like, the stages of grief, it looks different for everybody. But I would say that first year was definitely, I was definitely kind of living with the shock, and really I wasn't willing to accept that, like, they're not coming back. And so, I was doing a lot to escape the reality of that. And I went back to Rutgers 2 weeks after my parents died. I went back to Rutgers to try to just, like, find that normalcy. My auntie Linda, my mom's sister, really encouraged that. My uncle said, hey, you got to go back to school. Like, there's nothing free here back at home. Like, you got to go back. You have a commitment. Like, that felt like the only option I had. So, okay, I'm going to go back to Rutgers. And I was in survival mode, honestly. And so I was doing everything I could just to survive. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, we talk about shame and the darkness. That shame really started to creep in when I was confronted with the reality that I wasn't going to be able to continue with life and not explain how my parents died. Right? Like an explanation was needed. People wanted an explanation. And I couldn't just pretend. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't pretend that like, oh, because out of the gates, people do want to know, but people for the most part are more or less just concerned about me. Let's take care of Lauren. Is she okay? But then eventually people start asking questions and they want to know. And I realized like, I'm never going to be able to escape this. So then I started manifesting this sugar-coated story of like, well, what happened to your parents? And I would say, Mom died of respiratory failure, Dad died of a heart attack, because that sounded so much better than my mom and dad died of fentanyl overdoses. Yeah. So that gave me sort of the out. And it's crazy because you can say something over and over and over again to the point where you literally like believe it. My brain told me that that's what happened because I justified it. I mean, my mom technically died of respiratory failure, but I never attached overdose to it. I never attached the fact that like my parents went to a pain management doctor, were taking medication as prescribed, but eventually started abusing it. And that was the part that was hard for me because to me, it's one thing if my parents were so by the book and taking everything, because my mom was so by the book. But eventually, the medication took control of her. Prior to that, she was by the book. It was hard for me to admit that my parents in any way misused their medication, which ultimately resulted in their death. Because you look at that as a choice. They chose to misuse it, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't choose addiction. But when they put that fentanyl in the freezer, they knew the possibility, the risk associated, which is, well, if I take this drug, if I put it in the freezer, I ingest it, I could die. But I'm willing to take that risk because I'm in so much pain and I'm hurting. And I think that was the hard part for me to really grapple with, because now suddenly you're talking about two very strong people that can't even control that part of them.
So, I'm sober. I think listeners, if you've been around for a little while, also know that I'm sober quite a while. And that's the pain that comes when I was talking about the layer and how substance losing people to addiction is just different. First of all, I didn't know that if you put fentanyl in the freezer, it made it more potent. That's interesting. And then to think that my parents chose to do that knowing the inherent risks, right? Like the question that comes up a lot when I'm with people who have lost, and for me too, I mean, like my brother died from an overdose in March of 2018, leaving behind a 9-year-old daughter. And the question is, why would he choose that over his daughter? Right? Or over his mom, or over life, over living. We have to remember that people that are in that state, it's not a choice. It's like any risk that's attached to what might happen, because we're not stupid. We know. I mean, like in my drinking, when it was so bad, it was like, I'm probably going to do something really messed up tonight. I just hope it's not going to be that messed up. I hope I'm not going to get a sexually transmitted disease. I hope I'm not going to run somebody down with my car. Like I was like willing to accept all these things, but yet they were just kind of like there, like the tunnel vision of addiction is so strong to where that choice is gone. The definition of the disease is an obsession of the mind coupled with a compulsion and an allergy. It sets off an allergy. Basically, we become powerless to choose. We've lost the power of choice is the actual verbiage that we say. So when my brother, the last time he saw his daughter, was hugging her so tight and crying hysterically to the point where her mother had to like separate him from her and say, okay, Jeremy, you got to go. He knew, he knew, like these drugs have me. And he did not choose the drug over his daughter. He was powerless to choose life over death.
That's good.
That is the disease that I think doesn't take the pain away. Don't get me wrong, right? But you said knowing why or understanding more about it, I think takes that shame away a little bit when we can stop judging, right? Because it all comes down to judgment. Like, oh, well, if they could choose that, then that speaks to their character. That speaks to who they are. That is not who they are. I'm sure your parents, just like my brother, way more than addicts, right? Like, it happens. And these pharmaceutical industries, don't get me started on the pharmaceutical industry. But like in your parents' case specifically, right? Like, there's so much at risk here. I'm so sorry that you went through that. And what a shock, because it wasn't like a part of your like life. Like, not that it makes it easier. Like, it's all sudden unexpected when people die from drugs or alcohol, but just to have that like that does something. So like I said earlier, the fact that you like bounced back, your resilience, girl, is like top notch. Like, I'm so glad you wrote a book. I'm so glad you wrote this book, because like people need to know how to do this, and it's through the memoir. And I'm glad that you wrote a memoir and you kept it personal and you didn't say do bullet points, right? The memoir makes it so personal. And when somebody reads it, they say, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Because I mean, it is one of those things where, for years I'd been told, write a book, write a book, write a book. And I was like, I don't want to write a book. Like, what are we talking about here? And I also too think that I look back where I am now and where I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like the development and even just the willingness to open the door and look to see what's on the other side has changed so significantly. And I think I needed that maturity and that perspective to get me to a place where what I was able to put in that book carried even more meaning. And not even just for my story, but my hope and my true hope is that someone picks that book up and reads it, and I'm able to meet them where they're at. And as you said, give them that courage. Their journey and story is going to look entirely different than mine. But here's the thing, like, and no comparison here, because people love to compare. They love to be like, well, my tragedy is not as bad as your tragedy. No. Your tragedy, your feelings, your experience is valid in every way. And there is zero comparison here. This is where you throw all comparisons out the door. But my hope is that we, through this book, can have a conversation, that I can meet you where you're at. You can see what I've walked through and gone through and how you can apply that in your life and the realness of it, right? Because it's not, okay, well, here's 10 steps to become more resilient, or here's 5 steps to, become a better husband or better wife, better mother, or whatever. This is literally like life. Yes. And just putting those things out there, and where I learn those lessons. And my hope is that I can kind of be a gift to that person that might pick that up and read it as well, because life is challenging. And I think shame carries such a heavy weight. And that is something I live with for so many years, because here's the thing, like that shame piece, it can just get a hold in you. Because you mentioned, like, I grew up with the white picket fence around our house. Was it a white picket fence? No, that was my version of it. But, my dad was an alcoholic. He did struggle with alcoholism. And I saw how that would create tension between him and my mom, and maybe some poor decisions. And, he'd kind of have to pick up the pieces and start over after his relapses. And, he was very much functioning, and he was getting the help he needed. He worked at the VA. My dad was in the military. And so, he had PTSD, and his dad had struggled with alcoholism. And, I think there was a lot of components there, but I was still able, you mentioned the resilience piece, somehow as a kid, to just box that up and put it on a shelf and forget about it. Every time a relapse would happen, every time something would go wrong, it was like compartmentalize. And I think a lot of that probably came from gymnastics, right? The training, because in the sport of gymnastics, it is very much an individual sport, in the sense that, like, you literally get up, you compete, you do your routine, and if you fall, you better forget about it and you better move on. Like, I don't have, in football, 10 other guys out there carrying me along and covering up my mistakes. Like, what I do is me. And so it is challenging, when I look back to think, wow, like, I got really good at compartmentalizing this stuff. But it also, I think, was a protective barrier. Then I get to this part of my life, learning that both of my parents have died of overdoses. And once again, I go into compartmentalizing, right? I go right into compartmentalizing what has happened And to avoid that shame, I just tell that sugar-coated story because I know what society says about addiction and about people that are addicts. My parents aren't those things. So we're not going to go there. We're not going to let people see them as that. So I'm going to hide that part of them. I'm going to hide that part of their story because I don't want that to be their story and I don't want it to be my story. And it's amazing how we can create those narratives that then, in many ways, dishonor the truth.
Yes, definitely. Dishonor the truth of what the disease of addiction is and who those people were and are in their heart. They still are in their spirit. And it's that education piece, I think, that people really need to know and need to learn about what the disease of addiction really is. Like I was saying before, it's this obsession that just takes over. It's this need to, and I mean, and if you're taking it as prescribed for in the beginning, right, for pain management, that's different, right? And then at some point, whether you're taking it as prescribed or you pick it up on the street, in the beginning, it's kind of manageable. And then at some point, we talk about this, we cross a line. It's like this point of no return. Well, for many, some people can get sober. The majority of us actually don't. But you cross the line to it has now taken over you. You are a different person. You're not necessarily that person that you were before because now your brain chemistry is altered. Everything is altered. And you have this, again, this narrow, this one-track vision. So I think that the education piece is huge to let people know that all addicts aren't just like a bunch of dirtbags that are like choosing the easy way out. No, like that is so far from the truth. And I'm going to say maybe I'm biased because I am one, but like we have super big hearts. We feel a hell of a lot. And sometimes the world is just so painful that there's this need to like soothe. It's like this self-soothing thing. And then again, like I said, we cross that line. And it's very, very difficult when it gets turned on in the body to then choose. That choice is kind of gone. It's an act of divine intervention, really, I think, for people who get sober. But some people just don't have that opportunity and it gets too late, you know, like for your parents. Like sounds like they didn't have that time to be like, okay, come on, like it's hitting me. Okay. Were they in that zone for a while or did you feel like it was getting bad and then that they passed?
Well, I think that would be my, question in the conversation. And this is obviously something that would take a while to unpack, but you talk about that line when you cross over into that line and you think like, okay, what's going through the individual's mind? Do they know they're crossing the line? Do they just completely like run right through that line and they are on the other side? I think it's something that I've pondered for a while because I think about my parents' journey and how they got to where they got. And I specifically think about my mom. Mentioned to you, she's by the book. Mm-hmm. And she was actually applying for disability and kept getting denied. And so finally she hired an attorney to help her in the process. And she was asked to journal her experiences, what she was doing when she would wake up, what medication she was taking, how she was feeling. Like, so she was basically journaling all this to kind of put it into writing. And I've gone back and read some of that and you just see this innocence about her. You see somebody that is literally doing what they feel they're supposed to do. This is what I'm told. This is what I'm prescribed, like by the book. And then at some point, when did she cross that threshold of like, oh, I think I need a little more to get through today. Oh, I know this isn't right, but I just need a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Oh, something's off, but I'm going to be okay. Like, I don't want to sound the alarms. Mm-hmm. And then when did my parents get to a place, if ever, before they passed, where they were panicking, but they weren't able to sound the alarms and find their voice to be able to get the help they needed?
So we describe the disease as cunning, baffling, and powerful. And we also use the word insidious. It's insidious to where it plays tricks on our minds, right? To where it's like, maybe we can sense this might be getting out of control, but it's so insidious that it tells us this lie So addiction, essentially, I don't think a lot of people know this. It's a mental illness. It's classified in the DSM-5. It is a mental illness. Okay. That's the obsession of the mind. So it really starts here, right? So we might think, okay, yeah, I need this to take the edge off, or I'm so uncomfortable, I'm so much pain. I need this thing, but I feel like I am going down the slippery slope. All of a sudden, that little voice inside says, no, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. It's not too much. That's the disease. That's the mental illness, a part of our brains that tell us you're going to be okay. That's not you. You're not an addict. Or if you can see that you are, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to make that choice. I'm not going to sleep with that person. I'm not going to do this. No, that's not me. But once you ingest that, it's just all bets are off. So we say it's the first drink, and it might be the first pill or whatever. We say it's the first drink that gets you drunk. It's not the fourth or the fifth or the sixth. It's the one that sets it off the craving to where you can't stop, and then you change and all that kind of stuff. So insidious is the word that came to mind when you were.
That's good. I've actually never heard that word attached to it, but that's powerful. I know you talked about like the divine nature of all this, right? Like finding that, and I am a woman of faith, and so I am a Christian, but everybody finds their faith somewhere, right? Everybody finds their higher power, their thing that they believe in, the very thing that gives them hope. And so you have hope on one side, and then in my world, it's the devil on the other, right? And the devil is insidious. And I think that is where the enemy, whatever that looks like for you, the enemy, which can be your mind, because now suddenly your mind is unwell, that the enemy takes over your mind and now is telling you, you need this, just one more, it's okay. Yeah. Full disclosure to anyone listening, I've been very fortunate. It was a decision I made. I was 15 years old, and I kind of highlight 15. I can't tell you exactly when and where I was when I made this decision, but 15 is when I was starting to see the alcohol, see the drugs, see all the stuff in my high school, the marijuana and all the things. And, again, I was a competitive gymnast. I was chasing those dreams. I was around it. I was no goody two shoes. I was literally in the mix with friends. I mean, kids probably in the backseat of my car. Not probably. Kids were in the backseat of my car, smoking pot, drinking, doing all the things. I wasn't doing it. But thank goodness I didn't go down that road. So I will say this, I had never chosen substance. I have never drank, never smoked, never done drugs. And it's just an awareness that I've always had. It was a choice that I made long before I knew that my parents had a problem. Long before I even really associated the idea that, well, my dad drinks a lot and he is technically an alcoholic, which again, at that age, I had no idea what that really meant.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this could actually be detrimental to me as well. There was no association there. So I literally made that choice kind of on my own. But I look back I'm now 40 years old and I'm like, holy cow. That could have been the best decision I ever made just because of the family history, the genetic disposition. But also, my parents die. I go back to Rutgers 2 weeks later, and I'm walking into frat houses with cocaine lined up on the tables, just paraphernalia, alcohol just everywhere. I mean, you're swimming in it practically. It's college.
Yeah.
And that could have been my coping mechanism. It probably very well should have been, but I just stayed away and I said, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing and, figure this thing out. Sometimes I don't know. I just feel like I'm probably in a very small percentage. You talk about recovery and stuff too, probably a small percentage of people. Now, don't get me wrong. I found other vices and things that I could probably lean into. And, there's plenty of things in my life now. I'm far from perfect. So I don't want to say that. But I guess the reason I disclose that information is because, we're talking about this insidious nature. And I think I just loved leaning into that conversation, especially with someone like you, Amanda, who has walked through this and has felt that internal grip, just you know what I mean? Because it helps take me, maybe give me a little glimpse into the minds of an addict and what they're dealing with. And while I don't necessarily can't speak to it from personal experience, I can speak to it as the loved one on the outside, bringing them along with me. And I think that is where, I just want to better understand it.
For anybody out there who wants to better understand addiction, you can pick up a copy of the big book, we call it. And it's the title of the book is Alcoholics Anonymous.
Actually, I have one. I have it on my desk right over there. I can see it on my bookshelf.
It explains everything. You will no longer be, not you personally, but a listener, will no longer be confused or befuddled about why your person, your loved one, is an addict, or you listening. You might be an addict or an alcoholic listening to this, right? And if you're lost and so confused as to why can't I just stop? I mean, like that was the question, was like, I know these things are going to happen. Why can't I stop? That book clearly explains it. But I think you may have another book in you titled How Gymnastics Saved My Life. Because you had that drive, right? That must have been, was it? I can ask you, was that the motivating factor? Is like, well, I got to get up tomorrow morning and hit the bars. Like, I can't do that, the swinging bars.
The bars. Good play on words there, Amanda. Good job.
Yeah, I'm assuming that was your motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there was a big piece of that there. And I think the motivation, why the gymnastics, was also striving for excellence, but that excellence wasn't just for my own self-satisfaction. The excellence was also for my parents, for my family, for my coaches. Affirmation, man, let me tell you. It was getting that affirmation that, oh, good job, Lauren. Good job. I always wanted that affirmation. And so I think for me, that meant gymnastics, going out there, competing, performing, but also getting that well done, Lauren, from my parents, whether it's schoolwork or deciding not to go down that road and drink, do that. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and probably a lot that I'd love to understand about resilience, about grit, and why, because here's the thing. I don't, I think there's a lot of scientific and research type things that could probably help with that. But I also know that there's still a lot of science and things out there that have not uncovered the why. If the exact same thing happened to two people, why does one person choose one thing and one person chooses another, right? As a coping skill, whatever. I think there's still so much to unpack there. But I would never, ever, ever put myself on a pedestal and say, well, guess what? Like, I chose not to go down that road. You know what I mean? I'm thankful because I think I dodged a big bullet for sure. But I think that the way we as humans operate, as you said, I think insidious is in all of us. Like, an insidious nature is in all of us. And, what we choose to do with that can vary from person to person. But, I just wanted to preface it by saying I have such a deep empathy for addiction, but I know empathy is, correct me if I'm wrong, the ability to feel, feel what someone else is feeling to better understand it, maybe because lived experiences, right? So sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, but empathy is the ability to feel what they feel, to understand what they feel because of someone's own experience, right? And I think in so many ways, because I've walked through, even though I am not the addict myself, walking alongside my parents in that and being on the other side of this, and then also spending a lot of times with those in recovery to better understand it, because, I think I'm just so curious and really my heart, like even barely knowing you, Amanda, like my heart just sits with you because of what you've walked through. And like, it's amazing that you've come to the other side. I am amazed at people that find recovery, just absolutely in awe. I don't really know how to explain it. Maybe you can help, but like, I'm just in awe. Like, for you to walk through what you've walked through and to have gone down that path, obviously then dealing with your brother and being able to keep things together and all of that and not go back down that path. And, you know, maybe you relapsed, maybe you didn't, but I'm just in awe because I think there's such a strength that comes with people who have walked through the trenches of addiction and are able to come out to the other side. It just amazes me.
Thank you. You know, that what you just said speaks to what you said earlier about, well, a couple minutes earlier, about the insidiousness living in all of us and how it might not manifest as a drink or a drug. But to me, the insidious means, I wrote this down, the inability to see the truth. That is what the term insidious would mean to me.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the dictionary definition is, but to me, my insidiousness of my disease didn't play out by relapsing with a drug or a drink. It played out with other ways my disease tried to take me down and isolate me, right? Essentially, it's a disease of isolation, which wants to get you alone and kill you. So I pushed my husband away. It's what my book is about. Push my husband away, thinking I didn't love him. Really, it was I was afraid he was the next to die. My life blew up after my brother died. The grief, it just manifested in all these crazy ways because I was not going to, the drink or drug didn't really tempt me. It was more, I'm going to just burn shit down, like around me. I'm just going to
light it on fire, right?
I'm going to sabotage everything and ruin my life because essentially that's what my disease is about. The drink or the drug is the symptom. Okay. And they talk about this in the book if anybody chooses to read that book, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's this need to escape, whether we're happy because I drank at weddings or whether I'm sad because I drank at funerals. It's not about an event or a circumstance that makes me drink. It's about this need to escape my skin because I just feel so, I actually think it's an anxiety. I actually think underneath this, all this addictions and a lot of problems in the world and just personal problems is anxiety. I think like our society is functioning with like a major anxiety disorder, which is causing all these other things, right? Whether we're eating too much or we're shopping too much or we're having too much sex or all these other ways that addiction shows itself. Gambling
shows itself in so many ways.
Yes. So for people like me that are predisposed, I believe, like we talked about the genetic predisposition, I was like, okay, and I had an older brother, him and his friends drank and drinking was around in my life, you know, like it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try that. And I tried it and it was like, whoo, you know, I'm prettier, I'm funnier, people like me, I could talk, you know, like all this stuff that it did for me just made me a different person. I didn't want to be Amanda. I didn't want to be who I was from just other things too that have happened. But they do speak to the why me, why not somebody else, or why didn't you pick up the drink? Why didn't you go down that road? They do say science is moving in the right direction. And they do say that a lot of addicts and alcoholics are born with 40% less dopamine than a quote unquote normal person. So we need a substance or something to ignite to release the dopamine, to ignite the receptors. I don't know all the science behind it, but we want to feel good. And we walk around feeling, a lot of us, again, anxiety and depression. I know just from my time in recovery that so many of us suffer from anxiety and depression, and many of us bipolar. And it seems to be the people with more severe comorbidities have a harder time with the longevity, with staying sober. They relapse because their brain, exactly, the enemy of the mind. It's this, was Joyce, whatever her name is, a battlefield of the mind, or whatever she does. Like that's what it's in here. It's just this obsession that we have to escape and we have to feel better. We just want to feel better. Or if we're feeling good, we want to feel even more. We want to feel even better. Like it's just never enough.
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch on, you talked about needing the affirmation. Okay. You talked about that, you know, doing it not just for yourself, but also for your family or for your coaches, or you liking that. And I think it's totally natural for us to want to be seen, to be appreciated, to be acknowledged. You know, that atta girl feels really good. Like it feels really good. And I don't think that it's bad to want that. But when it gets out of whack, we call it instincts gone awry in recovery. When that becomes where my actions are solely to get that at a girl. That's where the problem is. Now, I don't know if that happens, that's your story, but I'm wondering, because I know grief cracks us wide open. In your book, do you talk about maybe other parts of you that needed to be healed because of your grief?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I think that the parts of me that needed to be healed, I mean, I will say this, and even beyond the writing of the book, finishing the book, I think there are a lot of parts of me that still need to be healed. And, I will praise to my therapist, Neely. She's incredible and has helped me walk through so many things. But, it even comes down to like current relationships. So my husband, we've been married for 5 years. I now have a 2-year-old son. Life experiences wire us in a way that create responses in our lives or manifest in the relationships we have and the connections we have because of what we've walked through. And so for me, a lot of that is abandonment, disappointment. I'm a people pleaser. So talk about affirmation, right? So now, through life, it was always affirming. And now I want to be that person for someone else, people pleasing, affirming that I care for you, that it's okay, that I'll get it done. I'll take care of it. Even if I literally have to strip the shirt off my back and go to the ends of the earth, and then other things suffer, like my relationship with my husband, right? Or, whatever it is, things suffer because something has to go to the back burner in order for me to deliver for, the people I'm trying to deliver for.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to really walk through that. And it's been interesting because trying to unpack that has been really interesting, because you start to realize that your life experiences and things you've walked through, they're like wired inside of you, and they become like a force behind why you do things, the way you do things, how you operate as a human being, how you connect with people, whether that's in your, family sphere, maybe your work sphere, wherever it is. And it can play a huge role in the decisions you make and the way you operate. And so I think for me, writing the book really helped in so many ways. And I think where I'm at now, again, I'm always a work in progress. I will never be quote unquote healed. I have found healing, but it's still going. That doesn't end, right? I think like anything else. And I mean, you can probably speak to that specifically in recovery, right? You're always walking on that journey. The journey is never over. And so even though this book, we put a pin in after 33 chapters, like the story's still being written. And I think what it has also forced me to do is not only take the story and sort of where I'm at now and sort of button up, put it real pretty in a package and put it in a book. It's also really ignited this want and this need to go deeper and to understand why I'm the way I am and why others are the way they are, because I think those are some of the conversations that we can have authentically, right? Because we talk about getting real, that can help people unlock some of the pain and the grief and the shame that they're feeling. And sometimes it just takes curiosity, right? Our own curiosity to say, I feel really good about this thing. I could just put it on a shelf and be done with it. Or I can unbox it right here and keep working through it to better understand why I am the way that I am. Because I never think we're done healing. I never think we're done growing. We're never done. The process is never done. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where I'm at now, is that like, this has ignited a whole nother side of me of wanting to just better understand the impacts of our trauma and the things that we walk through and the impact of shame. And now how can I use that experience and what I've learned and grown from to help other people with that?
Totally. And like the people pleasing or the wanting to do for others, it's not a bad thing, right? Again, that's like how we're using it. So now it sounds to me like you're learning to use it in a way to service, right? In service to others, right? That book is an act of service to others in addition to your own healing. Like both can exist. Like I could be doing this book for me, right? To find my own freedom, to find my own healing, all of that stuff. And in turn, it's also then helping somebody else. And I think that the more we can see ourselves and the truth about ourselves and get that insidiousness of these stories we tell ourselves or what's going on here and get real about that, then that is the way that we can help others. And I think that's why there's more than one human being on the planet. I always say there's 8 billion of us because we're supposed to be going through our own stuff, looking at our stuff, and then helping others, being a good steward of humanity, if you will. Like feeling our own humanity through our traumas, through our pains, and then I always say grief is a gift. I always back this up with, and the people in acute grief probably going to tell me to go stick it where the sun doesn't shine. But when you get a little spaced from it, you realize that this grief is what cracks that door open, like you were talking about, to look at who am I really? How am I operating? What happened to me as a child, right? That needs to now be healed, or else it's going to manifest in all these really painful ways for myself and others. Closest relationships. Thank you for talking about your marriage a little bit. People don't like to talk about that kind of stuff, but like that's where these things really play out. And that's probably why I'm convinced that there's a lot of divorce out in the world, because we don't know how to be emotionally intimate with ourselves and then with others. It's just too scary. And then when these big midlife crises happen, or rebirths or breakthroughs or whatever however you want to look at them, we get so vulnerable and we feel so naked and raw. We don't know how to that's probably a whole different podcast, but that's how.
Right. I'm like, I feel like it should be a totally different conversation, and I love too, in acknowledging, you talked about you used the word coexist. And I think that's something that I've really been learning and leaning into a lot, because I do think that we oftentimes get in this one track mind of well, I can't be happy and sad at the same time. Those are very conflicting things. Right. But the truth of it is that many emotions can coexist. Many feelings can coexist. Every day we're living proof of that, because in this world, you're never going to feel happiness 100% of the time, but you're never going to feel sadness 100% of the time. There's a million other emotions to plug into that equation. But I think coexisting is such an important thing to recognize, is that, we're always kind of searching for those answers. And a lot of times we just want a singular answer, like the blueprint. This is why ... finish the sentence. And that is just simple, simplified, not complex, but that's just not how this thing works. And so I do think that really acknowledging that the coexisting of emotions are valid, and it's okay for society to tell us we should feel a certain way, or man, I even tell this to people. My parents passed away 22 years ago, right? And sometimes people will come up to me and say, well, I lost this, or I went through this, and it happened so long ago. I know it's silly for me to even feel this way. And I'm like, pump the brakes. We're going to retract that statement, because there is no timeline, and there is no manual for how you're supposed to feel when you're supposed to feel it. And it's okay that maybe you've spent the last 10 years living your best life, traveling the world, finding love and hope and all the things. And then suddenly now you find yourself in this dark hole processing something that happened years and years and years ago. But that's how life works. And really, that's kind of something I've worked with that with my therapist, but we kind of equated it to popping that door open, because I think that was one thing for me with the shame, with my parents, because you'll read in the book, there's a lot of things that happen in between, like the then of when they died to where I'm at now, that I would start to pop the door open. I'd look around the corner, and then I'd get scared and slam it shut. Then I might walk through the door and take 10 steps. And then all of a sudden I'm running back through that door, back the other way. And it just shows the tug of war and the push and the pull, because nothing's linear here, right? Nothing is linear and mapped out first that it's like this. And I think that when we can grow to understand that better, we learn to give ourselves more grace. And I think that is so important, that we give ourselves grace, because we need it. And, having the strength to give ourselves grace, because there's people out in this world that will give us grace, or, our friends, our loved ones, those that believe in us. But then suddenly, we're the quickest to stamp out and eliminate grace from ourselves. And I think it's important to really, kind of go there and give ourselves what we deserve.
Very well said. Very, very well said. I don't know what chapter it is, but there's a line, the first line in one of the chapters in my book, I say, I am my own worst enemy. You know?
Amen to that. Yes.
I could hear it a million times, you know, I'm worthy, I'm valuable, I'm loved, I'm this, I'm that. But if I don't believe it myself, I'm going to keep shutting that door and not giving myself that grace and say, I don't deserve that, right? I don't deserve that happiness, that freedom, that grace, that self-compassion. You know, whenever I hear grace, I think self-compassion. My therapist said it to me a long time ago. This was when I was pregnant, and I was like 12 weeks pregnant. Like I was very newly pregnant, maybe 14 weeks. And I already was big. Like I started out like a little overweight. I didn't like how I looked. I was very uncomfortable. And I remember telling her, I really don't like how I look. I feel gross. Da, da, da. And she was like, what would you say if you saw a girl, a pregnant woman walking down the street that's just like you? What would you? And I'd say, oh, she's pregnant. And she was like, well, why can't you give yourself that grace? Why can't you look at yourself that way? Why is it okay for other people?
Yeah.
But it's not okay for you. So that like really helped switch.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
because you probably look at a girl that's 12 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever, early pregnant and be like, oh, she's so cute.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's pregnant. And I would be looking at the beauty of the fact that she's got a baby brewing in there. Yeah. You know, like I wouldn't be looking at what she looks like. No.
Yeah.
It just speaks to where I was at that time. So I love that when you said like take 10 steps out of the door and then run back in. Yep. Yeah, you know, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you lost all of that growth that you had in those 10 steps. Yeah. Those 10 steps are still there. They're inside. And when you peek out that door again, guess what? They're going to come back. Yep. And you're going to be there at that.
You're building that tool. You're building that toolkit, having that toolbox ready. You're sharpening yourself, sharpening your skill set, sharpening the various things in your life that are sitting in that toolkit, right? You don't completely lose those. And you can probably speak to that in the recovery world. Because I do think a lot of times it's hard to give ourselves grace. And when we do slip up, and whether that is in the recovery world where you're, you know, you have a relapse and, you know, man, I slipped up, I messed up. Maybe it's not even taking a substance, but going somewhere that creates what you were talking about kind of, you know, earlier. It's just amazing. And I do think that at the core of it is that we do truly have to find the courage to go there, right? Have the courage to even open the door, to explore, the curiosity, even though it's going to hurt, it sucks. Because I think a lot of times that's what we do. It's like we unpack our bags and the mess of it all because it's easier to stay there, or it's easier to forget. It's easier to just not even think about it than it is to like pack our bags and go on an adventure and explore and unpack like our mess. Because life is messy. We are all messy. And I think it's important to do that. But it does take courage, and it takes a willingness to try.
100%. And, you know, going back to that coexist thing with the grace and and relapsing, and we always welcome everybody back with open arms. Like, we're just glad that people make it back alive. And we say, let us love you until you can love yourself, all of that. But coexisting with that grace, which I think you have this ability because of where you are in your life and the work that you've done and the healing you've had and the success you've had, is also that push, right? Like we have to have the grace and the self-compassion, but it also has to be backed up with some diligence and some hard work and some like, okay, yes, I'm going to give myself grace for slipping up in whatever way, but that doesn't mean that I'm off the hook for pushing and striving to do better, right? Yeah. But I think that both of those coexist at the same time. Just because if I'm pushing myself doesn't mean I'm not giving myself grace, and if I'm giving myself grace doesn't mean that I'm still not holding myself accountable to doing better.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so good. Gosh, so much to unpack here. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in almost an hour here, which is
this has been awesome. This has been awesome. All right. Well, tell everybody where they can get your book, where they can find you online, what you're up to. Like, what are you up to? What's your next deal? You're speaking on all these stages. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, I've just been on this speaking circuit. You know, right now it's technically my off season. I don't know when this podcast will post, but we're about to head into football season. So as a sideline reporter for ESPN, I'm on the sidelines a lot, covering college football every weekend. And so I'm kind of like, slow down time. I need time here at home, especially with my little baby, my little Mason. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of speaking, and it's really been great because it has been the opportunity to just get out there and share a message of hope, share a message of just, unlocking the shackles of shame and helping people to see where they're at in life and how they can, find better health mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all the things, because we're all walking through it, and when you can raise your hand and say, me too, it just gives you permission to open up and go there. And so it's been great, a lot of speaking events. And then of course with the book, and we're actually going to be releasing the paperback, at the end of September. And so that's kind of been a fun journey. We did like the rollout of the hardcover, and then we'll be releasing the paperback late September, I guess September 30th, I believe it is. But, just another opportunity to just reach people, meet people where they're at. And so excited about that. For those of you who are listeners, I also do have the book available on Audible and some of the other platforms that do audiobooks. You will actually hear me narrating it. And so I got to tell you, Amanda, one of the craziest things was like, I had obviously written this book. I had a co-writer, so shout out to Holland for that. Someone that really helped me create. It's like we took a bowl of clay and like molded this thing. So I was knee deep in it. But when I had to put a microphone to it and suddenly read the words from each page out loud, man, it was crazy. Emotional gut punch for sure. I'm vividly seeing the images that I'm speaking of. Yeah. Even with my parents. And I wasn't even there that day. I was not in the house when they died. And so I'm taking a recollection of what we pieced together from the different people that were there and that witnessed the things that happened and unfolded. So with that being said, it's been a journey. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to. But I'd love to connect with you all. I'm on social media at Lauren Sisler, pretty much every platform out there. And so if you have any questions, shoot me a note. Love to hear your story and whatever it is you're walking through, maybe what has resonated. And again, it's been an honor just to spend some time with you, Amanda, and kind of unpack some things. And that's what I love about these podcasts, like the conversations, because I don't even know if we were quite sure where this was going to go. But to me, we unpacked a lot of stuff, and I feel like there could be a part two.
Yeah, it always goes exactly where it's meant to go. And yeah, I'd be open to a part two if you ever want to hop on next season or something. I'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
You're amazing, Lauren. Thank you so much for being a bright light and that hope. I love unlocking the shackles of shame. That's amazing. And yeah, you're out there doing it. I'm proud of you. And I really hope that other public figures, people that are out there that have had these similar experiences, can find their strength and hope through you to share their story as well and to normalize emotion, all of it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Lauren. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye.